I think we're on. Awesome. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. It's Suyani. I'm the Women's Program Curator at the Neighborhood Pride Center. I use she, they pronouns. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this very exciting discussion panel. It is entitled The Art of Drag Kings and Masculinity. This conversation was inspired by our Lavender Lit book club, which was Kings, Queens, and In-Betweens by Tanya Boteju. We had our discussion yesterday, and it was a beautiful discussion. It is a wonderful young adult novel about a coming-of-age girl who discovers the drag scene and gets, caught up in there. And yeah, if you guys want to read it, please do. We're going to have our author talk with Tanya at the end of the month on the 26th, I believe, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to have people come on and start our conversation about kings and masculinity. So if you guys would help me join, Frankie M. Cyanide is here, as well as Giri Spades is here with us. And I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on and talking to us about this conversation that doesn't necessarily get recognized as much as it should. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. And I'm super excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Thank you so much for having us. It's definitely a discussion that I've been hearing more lately, but still there isn't much discussion on. So this is an exciting opportunity.
For sure.
Same thing here. I'm excited to be here. I'm ecstatic that I was given the opportunity to speak. And I feel like this is going to be super interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you, Frankie, our moderator. And yeah.
All right. So I suppose that we should probably start off with just introducing ourselves because that is a thing that makes sense. So Gary, you're the guest, so I'm gonna have you go first, unless you want me to go first. I'm really Gary.
Good morning. I'm Giri Spades. Yes, it is morning somewhere. I've been doing drag for 2 years-ish. Technically, I started in 2018, but I was out because of COVID and quarantine, so I didn't really do anything. I don't know. I pull inspiration from just about everything: comic book art, anime, my iconic cat eye. You'll see my cat pop up at some point. But I love doing drag. It's fun. It's a great outlet for me emotionally, physically, spiritually, and it gets me out of my comfort zone.
Awesome. And I am Frankie Cyanide. I am Connecticut's most booked drag king. Doesn't take much. And I started drag in 2018, but I used lockdown as a time to really work on my makeup and my outfits and figure out who Frankie was, and just to kind of hone everything. So post COVID, I kind of hit the ground. I don't want to say running, maybe tumbling, maybe falling. I just kind of fell through the ground and found an entire basement full of fun. So I'm going to go from there. And basically, I think it's important to really kind of focus on what being a drag queen, being a drag king. Obviously, we're in the same family. We're all drag performers, but how do you feel about what drag is? What really is drag? Because right now I'm wearing a binder. I just came home from my day job where I am Selena, but I have a flat chest right now. So drag isn't just binding down my chest. So what is drag? I'll answer that, but if you have
Drag for me, I have a little cheat sheet. I already wrote down all the questions earlier, but drag for me is the creative and artistic freedom and expression in which I could share with my community and captivate my audience, putting a smile on their face with healing mine. And I guess in a way, drag to me it's not only just the art expression. It's not just performing on stage, what I like to say, acting a fool on stage. Hi, Ray.
Hi.
Awesome. Here's Ray. Finish your answer though, Gary. You got here on time.
Yay. That's a first. But like it's not about just the expression itself and performance and the dance and stuff. For me, it's a healing journey for me because I wasn't always so secure in my sexuality or my identity. And as I continue with my drag career and mastering how I do my makeup, creating new outfits, putting myself out here, getting opportunities like this, it's become somewhat of, hopefully I'm using the word right, kind of like a catalyst to help strengthen my my confidence in myself and what I'm putting out there.
Well, that is a much more thorough answer than what I have, but I'll come up with something better. Ray, since you just got here, thank you for joining us. Could you give the audience and also us just a quick introduction to who you are, how long you've been doing drag, and also what does drag mean to you?
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Ray. I have been doing drag for 5 years. What year is it? 5 years.
2022.
5 years. But I don't know if last year counts because I performed like 3 times or something. But I started drag 5 years ago. What drag means to me? That is a very broad question. That's a very broad question. I don't know. Like its meaning has changed to me throughout the years. At first, it was like a confidence builder. It was a way of kind of figuring out some gender stuff. Now it's still like a confidence builder, but I feel like more so now I feel inspired to do things that like I don't know. I feel more creative about it now and trying to kind of express my creativity through drag.
Cool. For me, I would say that my definition of drag, and clearly drag is a very personal experience and all of us have very different answers. I would say when I'm asked what is drag and I have to give a very quick answer, I say performative gender, and that is the entire answer because most people do not have the attention span for anything longer. But for me, when I first started, I mean, I was raised by clowns, so which I could do an entire panel on itself, but I have always been somebody who enjoys being on stage, but I remember being in as a teenager being in the local youth theater group and being cast as the female lead in some play, and I was like, can I please be the gym coach? Don't make me be the woman. I can't play as a girl on stage. What, you want me to sing as if I'm into a guy? And they said, you can run backstage, dress up as a guy to be in the ensemble for one of the group numbers, and then come back to be the main character, please. And I went, fine. But so for me, I've never felt comfortable as feminine with femininity, and drag. I started off by doing drag queen makeup because that's all I knew. That's all I'd ever really seen. And it started as a way for me to experiment with femininity. And then I realized that drag doesn't need to be quite so binary, but also that I could lean into my affinity for 70s game show hosts and villains from kids shows and just be a wacky dude, but then sometimes be a wacky dude in a dress. So basically drag for me has been just a way to express who I am and how I feel and what clothing feels natural to me. And I think that that's something that all drag performers across the spectrum can relate to. So, what was the first time that the two of you got into drag and the first times that each of you performed in drag? And how was that transition? How did you feel? Like, at first, was it just getting dressed up with no intention of performing, or what? Let's start with Gary.
Um, Kind of similar situation as you. In theater, I was a theater kid, so actually starting back to 2012, my last year in middle school, I finally made it into the play. We love nepotism, right? But it was like some kind of like big bad wolf goes to court and stuff like that. And I was the lumberjack, flamboyant lumberjack, who had won first place in the most ruggedly handsome lumberjack pageant. And that's the first time they ever put me like in a beard, a flannel shirt, and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, it just felt more natural than playing a female character. Because I play a female character for the most part every day. Shit's boring. But come to high school, same thing. I'm in the theater productions. I want to say out of the 8 productions, I want to say 6 of them, I played a male role. And I was the happiest playing those male roles. As far as going into college, same thing as well. My biggest and most major part, actually where I got the name Giri from, was a male part. And kind of like understood what would like the theme was going on there, but my first ever drag show that I went to was in Providence, Free Play Mondays, watching Kara Stone, Pariba, and Calypso Phoenix Brown. And just getting into the scene. And I would say after half a year of watching drag shows, I found out they got something called an open stage. Bruh, I was in it. Okay, I was in it. I started up in, I want to say mid 2018, early 2019. And my first start was at Ego Providence. And from there, I was there every single week. Then I found out that Dark Lady, another gay bar and performance venue in Providence, was doing an open stage, and I went there. And from then, I found Shay, I found you, and like, it's just, I love it.
Fabulous. And how about you, Ray? What was the first time that you did drag, and how did it feel? And was it performing, or was it just dress up?
I'm I feel like the first time was when, like, in college, I came across like a poster for a drag show, the campus drag show, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I happened to be in a club or a class with a couple of the people that were organizing it, and kind of like, I don't know what possessed me, but I was like, I feel like I want to do this. And then I think after being like, okay, I'm doing it, then I started playing around with makeup and stuff. And I guess, dress. I didn't have any costumes. I just wore some things that were in my closet. Maybe I bought a men's shirt for the first time. But I always like wore masculine clothes. So it was very much a like baby Tran figuring it out kind of moment. Because that's when I started, I think around that time I started going by they them pronouns or shortly after. But I had been learning about that in the clubs there. So they kind of like went hand in hand, like, okay, like let me try out some masculine clothing. Even though I never dressed feminine, but like I felt like I wasn't allowed to shop in the men's section before. And then I was like, oh, now I have an excuse to because I need to buy something for this show. But really, I would just start wearing these clothes that I bought. So I didn't really like know anything very much about drag. Like I never watched Drag Race or anything before. I think I saw one man drag show in P Town one time with my family, and that was my exposure to drag. So the first time I wasn't even planning on performing like my own number for that drag show. I just wanted to be part of it in some way. So I'm like, can I do, they had a runway walk and then they had the performances. So I was like, can I just do the runway walk? Is that allowed? Because I was too scared to like actually perform, but I wanted to dress up all fancy and walk down a stage for some reason. But I did end up doing like, they had a little group king number. So that was my first time like actually doing drag, even though it wasn't like a solo performance.
It still counts.
Yeah.
It counts. I think that's actually really, really cool that they had a group king performance, because I'm going to be honest, the only time in my life I've seen a group king for more performance was the one that I did at the Dorothy Awards with two of my drag sons about 2 months ago, because it is kind of hard to find multiple kings, and that's why, heck, just having 3 of us here is a lot more than I feel I ever saw back when I started. For me, the first time that I put on drag was, I guess, dressing up as Willy Wonka for Halloween in 9th grade, but I don't really know if that counts because he's not the most masculine fella. But then the next year I was a guy for Halloween. That was just my costume. I wore boxer shorts that were coming out of my dad's very oversized pants, my jeans that were falling off my ass, as was the style at the time. My facial hair, because I was only 15, was still blonde, and I didn't have to shave it off all the time like I do now. Thank you, hormones that are like, I'm not even taking hormones. That's just my body. But I put mascara on my little baby hairs, on my mustache, and I looked like a really sketchy bus driver. But when I went into my gym locker room to get my sneakers, a couple of girls screamed. So I was successful at looking like I shouldn't have been in the middle school girls' locker room or high school girls' locker room. So at least there was that. But my first time like going, I'm going to get in drag now, was a friend of mine invited me to go celebrate for drinks. I was 26, and she had just gotten approval for her surgery for her transition and wanted to go out for drinks to celebrate. And I had 3 hours to kill before we were planning on meeting up, and I had nothing else to do. So I went, what if I kind of like tried doing a chest contour thing to look like pecs? I don't know. And then I showed up in basically full drag, and it was at a local gay bar, and there was a queen who's like, do you perform? I'm like, I guess I can perform. And it still took another like 4 months before they put me on their open stage. That was not, it was only monthly, so it was kind of hard to get on. But once I did, it felt amazing. And I kind of, at first I wanted to do 50-50 girl drag and guy drag, because the idea of someone being entirely guy drag was so alien to me. And for the first year and a half I was doing drag, everyone thought that I was Ray DeCorazón. So um well, now people know that we are two separate people because you are a foot taller than me, and I have much sharper features thank you to your hormones. But but no, that's I think it's something that's really hard to explain sometimes. That first time that it really clicks when you're either up there on the stage or putting together that outfit and you go, oh, this is me. That's also me, but this is me. And this duality of existing. But Ray, you mentioned before, and I think that that's a good segue into this topic, but you said that drag really was helping you with your gender and all of that. And so I think it would be good just to talk about how do we all perceive our gender out of drag, and has drag affected that in any way? I'm gonna just keep on having it be Gary, Ray, Frankie, because that makes sense. It's a nice little clockwork circle on the screen. So, Gary.
I guess for my drag, it's really like inside versus outside of drag. Outside of drag, I normally go by they, them pronouns. I'm not too big of a stickler. Normally, whatever rolls off the tongue, I really don't care most of the time. I am kind of a femi to an extent, but I feel more comfortable as Giri. And in a way, I feel like my drag is an extension, which I'll speak about it later with one of the other questions that we have here. But like as an extension to who I am and kind of like where I see myself. And I'm not sure yet whether or not I fully would like to transition or take hormones or anything like that. But I just got me some boxers and boy, do they feel so good. I love my binder. I've been wearing my trans tape like every single day. So like, I feel like my drag has kind of just opened my eyes to my true self, really, to my most authentic self. Because when I'm on stage, when I'm performing, I'm not just Gary, I'm also Malicia. That is my out of drag name, or Mel. But that extension right there shows me the two sides. You know, everybody's has their feminine side and their masculine side. And what I'm doing is I'm merging the two. And having that union and having that connection and having that comfortability all around in myself, in my identity. And it just, I don't know, I just feel empowered, a bit more empowered as Gary, but it's also allowed me to be more authentic with myself outside of drag, more confident outside of drag, and just be who I am.
And that's important. How about you, Ray?
Can you repeat the question, please?
No. Yes. How has drag and your gender identity, your understanding of your own gender out of drag, how has drag affected that? You kind of touched on it a little bit before. And if you don't really have much anything additional to say, that's totally valid.
So for me, I feel that doing drag helped me become comfortable with both masculinity and femininity, because while I wasn't a feminine person before, I also, like I mentioned, I felt like I wasn't allowed to buy men's clothes. I also felt like masculinity was wrong for me because of my body. So at first, drag got me comfortable with masculinity. Okay, I'm allowed to feel certain way and dress certain ways and be a certain part of myself. And then at a certain point, I was like, well, if I can do this, why can't I also be feminine? Like, I was allergic to femininity before. Like, that's how it felt. I was like, "Oh, it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable." But that's because it was being forced on me. And so I kind of decided, like, at a certain point, like, "Okay, I'm gonna free myself from any like, expectations, like, any "You should be this. You have to do this. You can't do that." Any of those, I felt like there was just a point where I was like, okay, let me just experiment with all of the things. Let me go be a drag queen and see how that feels. And this was all like on stage, the experimenting, but off stage, I kind of became more comfortable with myself and I learned more about myself. And now I'm okay if people find me a little feminine. And part of that might be um like like taking hormones to transition as well, where I feel more comfortable. I feel like a lot of trans guys might, because they feel more comfortable in their skin, also feel more comfortable expressing certain feminine parts about them. So drag for me definitely helped, like, be comfortable with the concept of femininity being part of me as well as masculinity, and just picking and choosing, like, who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Just stop caring about what I'm supposed to be. Because I don't know, it all still confuses me, the whole gender thing. So I'm like, why bother?
I completely can relate to a lot of that, as I say very often as Frankie, because Frankie is essentially a walking dad joke. I hardly even know her, because ha ha ha. Well, everyone cut out for a second. All right, looks good to me. But yeah, all right. But no, that also happened a lot with me. I felt like there was this expectation of femininity, not necessarily in my personal life, because uh my dad is an extraordinarily flamboyant straight man, but um we are Hispanic. That just kind of happens sometimes. But I never quite, and even still, I feel like if I have to get in a dress for an event, that is drag in a sense. I'm a drag queen. You're making me cross dress to dress like a woman because I'm just butch. But I have been experimenting lately with being more feminine in my drag occasionally. I definitely have some of the most feminine eye makeup of in the drag king scene that I have seen, because that's how I started doing my makeup, was learning from drag queens, and I really like the ability to put as many colors as possible on my face, because I cannot pay attention. I cannot decide on one. But so I and Ray, your queen name was Raina Shine, right?
Yes.
I love that name. It is so good. I chose Frankie because it's gender neutral. Um and I also like the fact that whenever people become fans of me, they are getting cyanide poisoning. Just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, so I think that that's definitely um an important thing. I personally I go by she and they out of drag, and Frankie is he and they in drag. And the M in Frankie M Cyanide stands for and as the years go on, that is more and more applicable to everything in my life. My gender has always been all right. So I'd say that a good next thing, the patriarchy. Okay, I'm not going to say that the patriarchy is a good next thing, but it is a good next discussion topic. It's not a good thing, in my opinion. Maybe y'all love the patriarchy, but how would you say being patriarchy and misogyny, how being an AFAB, assigned female at birth, regardless of your gender, as out of drag or anything, have you felt that you have been treated any differently in the drag scene because of being a drag king, because of being someone born without quite as external genitalia? Like, have you felt any pushback or been embraced in either way? Have you felt that that has affected your drag career and your drag journey? Gary.
I feel like a combination of the two. Like, I feel like I was like pushed back, how it was a little bit of a hindrance at first, but also embraced at the same time. And coming into the scene, like you said earlier, there's not much of drag king representation to play off of. So in a sense, I had to play my own mentor and student. And it's funny because the way the society is built right now, in the drag community, I feel like there's an exchange in power. Queens, they tower over us kings. They're respected, they're looked up to, they're worshipped. Whereas kings, quite literally, fall quite short in comparison. And when I mean that is we're expected to work much harder than queens do. We're expected to be more on top of our dance and performances. I've also noticed that, especially with kings like myself, I'm more of a storyteller, a mime. Going back on the theater background, I like to emote my whole body. I like to flow with emotion so it all connects and comes together to make you feel something. If you don't feel something during my performance, I didn't do something right. But what I found is, depending on whether they like it or not, it really just depends on the area code and what kind of audience you have and what they're looking for. But I've noticed that a lot of people find it a bit lazy to perform that way, and they want me to do more. And it's kind of disheartening, because I do put in a lot of work. I'm spending a lot of time and effort on outfits and bedazzling, sewing, gluing, so I don't look like a off the rack king. And as far as dance moves go, I feel like most of the time I have the same old dance moves and I'm still learning some more, but people want me to be more high energy. People want me to throw my body around, do flips and tricks. And in a way, I feel that, I got into the game a little bit late, and my only introduction to drag was Drag Race and stuff like that. So I knew the community was going to be a little bit cliquey. I knew there would be drama. I knew there was going to be the people who are held at a much higher pedestal and the people that are barely looked at. And sorry, I have it in my notes. But like, I kind of find it weird in a sense that that community is a bit more very, very welcoming, very open arms. So far, I haven't had any problems, but this is so far from what I've seen. There's, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but
We can also come back to you if you want to.
please.
All right.
Down.
Okay, Ray, do you have anything to say on the topic of being treated differently as an AFAB performer in the drag scene, and the patriarchy and misogyny and trans misogyny or anything like that?
Yeah, so I feel like overall I've had an easy experience, and I know that like I'm friends with a lot of kings on Facebook, and I've heard a lot of stories about people that have struggled a lot more with this. So like I'm very fortunate with the people who have granted me opportunities, especially early on in my drag, because I would not be as polished a performer as I am now without the early support. And I'm kind of I'm nervous that Connecticut will become some of these other places that I've heard about, you know? I'm nervous that the new kings coming up are not going to get as much opportunity as the new queens are getting. And like that's essential to be able to have the resources to put back into your drag. I was not able to make fancy costumes and put in all that time. Like when I started, I didn't have spectacular looks. I was just doing what I could to perform a lot, you know, like I just hope that queens are booking the new kings as much as they're booking the new queens. It is hard to do this without support. Like I've had support of my family, and I've had support of like kings around me when I went to LA. I had kings that I hung out with that I learned a lot from, and like traveling to Austin, I learned a lot from kings. Like it's important to support the people around you so that they have a chance and have an opportunity to like succeed. Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's great. That's great.
When I started, I'm like, okay, like I get it. I'm not gonna do shows with other kings because there wasn't, you know, like, but at this point,
there's no real excuse because there were enough of us.
yes. And if you don't know, if you're a queen booking a show, because there's there's not many kings booking shows here. So if you're a queen booking a show, I know you're friends with a bunch of queens. You probably aren't friends with a bunch of kings to book. Reach out to one of the kings you do know. If they're not available, they can give you a whole list. I have a whole list. I have a list of kings in Connecticut. I have kings in Rhode Island. I have kings in Massachusetts. You both are on that list.
Yeah.
I've done that before with certain shows. Like if I'm reached out to and I'm not available, I'm like, here's another king, reach out to them because it's very important. So like especially for the bigger things like the prides, like I don't think there's an excuse not to have a king in your pride at this point.
At this point, there's no excuse to only have one king in your pride, in my opinion. And to volley off of that, if you don't mind, when I started, I was more than happy to be the token king because I was getting a booking.
Yeah.
Wow. And at this point, if I am the only king, I'll still take the booking. Don't get me wrong. I quit my like good paying salary job in February because it was killing me. So I like getting paid, but I will definitely tell you to book more kings, especially if it's one of those shows that is 50 performers at Big Pride, and that is something that I really appreciate about New Haven Pride Center is I remember it was New Haven Pride 2019, and there is a photo that my girlfriend, who is now my drag son, but who was not doing drag at the time, took a picture of me, and you were walking by in the background just there, Ray. And I just remember being like, ha, look at that. Just like the two there's the guy that everyone thinks that I am, because no one can imagine there are two kings, especially not at the same gig. And so I have always appreciated that from New Haven Pride Center, and that is a really good point, because I'm really the only king who is booking shows in Connecticut that I know of. So it is something that queens need to be maybe a bit more on top of, is remembering that by only casting your friends, you very often end up with a very small group of performers. And I would love to expand that conversation into race, because there's a lot of intersection there, but we only have another 17 minutes on this panel. So unfortunately, that would take an entire extra hour at minimum, and we all know it would take far longer than that. So yeah, I definitely, on the kings needing to put in more effort, I know that one thing about Frankie is that I am very proud to show off the amazing bargains I got on my clothing and my accessories. A dream is a wish my heart makes, and by that I mean that I order a lot of things from Wish. And I am proud of it, because it's hilarious when I realize this shirt right here, love this shirt, $6. I get so many more tips when I wear this shirt than many of my others. But things like that are why I was publicly referred to as a mockery of the drag scene on Facebook by Local Queen a few months ago. And that is why I now call myself the mockery of the drag scene, because, okay, if that's what it takes to be a mockery, I will wear that title with pride. Gary, did you have anything else to say on this part, that now that you've had time to put it all together? Or if not, that's also
you guys actually both covered a lot of what I was going to say, but I just want to add in one more. As far as the expected sex appeal.
That was my next question.
Okay.
Whoa, that was not planned, but
I'll hold it.
Talk about sex appeal. So yeah, you go on with what you were going to say, but also my question was going to be, how is the expectation of topics and the way that performance is, and the expectation of being some super sexy Casanova or something like that, and how accurate is that to being an authentic performer, really? So go with what you were going to say.
It just in like terms of sex appeal, as a king, a lot lately I've been wearing my shirt out, because I've noticed I get the most tips that way, opposed to actually being buttoned up and looking dapper and gentlemanish. And it kind of frustrates me, because like I shouldn't have to show off my body to get $1, to get a booking, to be considered a valuable king in this community. And in a sense that not everybody, and especially kings coming into the scene or kings that are already in the scene, may not be that comfortable with their bodies and how they present. And I feel like almost like it's an expectation of me to bare my chest, to hump the air and swing around on a pole and act like a total F-boy. So, yes.
Yeah, that's definitely, and I know Ray, from what I've seen of your performances, you seem to be a bit more comfortable with being a more sexual performer, which again, not inherently bad. But do you feel that there's been a pressure to be more sexual? Or is that just what you're cool with and that's totally okay?
Well, that is what I'm cool with, but as well, but also, yeah, I did feel pressure for a long time to always do something like that. And now I care less. So I feel like I recently have done some of my favorite drag because I didn't push myself to do what the audience wanted. But yeah, like that was what was easy for me, and what gets tips. Especially certain venues
We
like
probably shouldn't name venues that we've had
no,
problems with.
I'm not gonna name venues, but I
Okay,
mean, like,
okay.
in general, like a big pride setting where there's a broader audience and maybe like people that haven't seen Kings a lot, like um or if it's like a more straight audience, certain venues, that's gonna appeal to them because they might not understand the like if they don't understand a king, they'll be like, oh, like sexy, that's cool, money, 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 bachelorette parties, money, money, money. But yeah, like I have felt pressured in that way to always do what the audience wanted and what they expected of me, and that's what I got known for. That's how queens would introduce me, is like heartthrob, Ray DeCorazón. So now I kind of feel like I'm trying to do more drag that isn't sexual and isn't um I don't know, that I'm more proud of. Which sometimes I am proud of being sexy, but sometimes I don't want to do that. And no, but I think it's a shame that a lot of kings do feel that way, because I've heard that sentiment from other kings like online as well. Like I feel like that's a shame because uh there's so much more art out there that's just such a small piece of like what's possible on stage for kings, and there's so much more out there that should be appreciated just as much and tipped just as much, because
Yeah.
like that's important.
I personally, you have both seen me perform, and I'm pretty sure you are well aware that if I tried to actually be sexy on stage, the entire building would just spontaneously combust, not because it was so hot, but because it was that awkward. Um, I I definitely, until I got my own real show, which, hey, might as well do the plug. I host a weekly open stage. Both of you have performed at it. It's every Wednesday and you can check it out. All the details on my social medias. But until I really had this space, I remember I would occasionally try to do the things I wanted to do, and I would get some pushback. And yeah, I can do a One Direction song, and that's about as sexy as I can get, is mockery of a teenage heartthrob. Like I can't do sexy. I can be like, yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, see, it's not gonna work for me. But I've always realized that's because of that expectation of sexiness, I go more towards the brunches and the story times because there's less of that expectation of being a sexy gyrating person in front of a bunch of school children. And if there is that expectation, then that event should be canceled because that's weird. But I remember doing a brunch once and doing a song from My Fair Lady as Henry Higgins, and this 70-year-old woman coming up to me and being like, I never thought I would see someone doing My Fair Lady at a drag show. And she was so excited, and she gave me a $10 tip. And so I've kind of leaned into that because the drag scene in general is very, very sexualized, and there are a lot of people getting into it very young. And I feel very awkward. I feel quite awkward when I see these young performers who don't really know who they are yet, trying to mold themselves into what they think someone else wants them to be. And it just rubs me many, many wrong ways. And is part of why I have always been so adamant about creating a safer space for more types of that sort of performance. And I remember one time somebody referred to my open stage as, oh yeah, that's that show for the girls who do drag, right? Because one, he was under the impression that it was only drag kings. It's not. It's just that it's the only space that drag kings apparently feel safe to come out in large numbers. But also, not all drag kings are girls out of drag. And also that is extraordinarily patronizing, condescending, lots of words. Those are words that that can describe a lot of how kings are treated in general. We are at 6:53, and this is over at 7-ish. So I'd say that we have time for one more sort of closing question, but we can take our time on it to an extent. So what advice would you say that you have for someone wanting to do drag? Not necessarily as a king. It can also be for a prospective drag queen who's watching this, because just as we can look up to drag queens can look up to drag kings. It's not look up to kings. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to start doing drag but needs that push, that has something holding them back? Gary.
I would like to start off this question with a little quote from a poem from Marianne Williamson. You may have heard it. It's from Our Greatest Fear. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, nor our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And what I say to that, go for it. Kind of cliche, and it could be something that saves you. Drag has become a mental, physical, and spiritual force that pushes me to my highest potential. Beyond the caricature of the male representation or a character you play on stage, but to kind of just mirror the best possible version of yourself and becoming closer in union to that version of which you see yourself as. So I say go for it. And personally speaking, drag has saved me. It's made me so much more confident. It's made me so much more happier in my body, in my space, in my community. I feel loved. I was welcomed with open arms. Don't worry about your makeup. Don't worry about your outfits. Don't worry about the shoes you wear. As long as you are a great performer and that translates on stage, you can only get better from there. So don't psych yourself out. Don't let anybody bully you out of it. This is an expression of yourself, an expression of your art, and an expression of the world that you live in right here. Bring it out. Bring it into reality. Make it yours. I love you.
Oh, that was beautiful. How are you going to follow that up? What's your advice to someone?
I feel like we should have ended with everything that Giri just said. Yeah, well, I can't be that eloquent, but
that's okay. Gary literally wrote that ahead of time. I can.
Yes. Well, okay. Yeah. Because what I always say is like, just do it. Just do it and reach out to people, because usually people are willing to help you out. Like I've never turned away anyone in my DM being like, hey, I have a question or whatever. Like I'm always willing to like help out someone that's interested in like getting started with drag. And don't worry about being perfect the first time you step on stage. No matter how perfect you are, you're going to look back on it and be like, wow, that was me. Like you're going to improve you as long as you start. You have to start somewhere. Like when I started, I was just like, makeup, didn't know how to do it. Costumes, didn't know how to do it. But I figured it out as I went, and then like I looked for all the opportunities I could, and that was stage time. Stage time is irreplaceable. That was stage time that every time I was on stage, I got a little more comfortable. I learned something. I screwed up big time and didn't do it again. Like I waited till last minute to look at my lyrics, and I realized, oh, there's a lot of words in this song. Like you have to make mistakes as you go. As long as you just get out there and start, you're going to improve, and you're going to get there, and you're going to be proud of yourself.
Exactly. And the advice that I would give is I also have a quote, although I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but it is from the great philosopher Jake the dog from Adventure Time. But sucking at something is the first step towards being kind of good at something. And honestly, no one's going to be critiquing you as hard as you are. You are always going to be the one who's like, oh God, I definitely bombed that. There have been a lot of performances where I have gotten off stage. I'm like, I'm never doing drag again. That was the worst song like I've ever chosen. Everyone hates me, and that was awkward. Turned out straight girls at the club with their boyfriends who didn't really want to be at a drag show in the first place, and I decided to do a show, a performance to an obscure Village People song, and ate a Big Mac on stage. Of course they didn't tip me, but I learned my message, and now I'm only going to do that at my own shows where people know what to expect. But you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do stupid things. You're going to feel like an idiot, and that is awesome. That is part of growing up, because that means that when the next generation of hopeful drag performers comes to you, you're able to help them, because no one started out perfect. Even if RuPaul will always look at the youngest person on any given season and go, you, honey, you were born to do drag because you look just like every other 20-year-old who's been on my show. No one was born to do drag. All of us were born to do drag. Do what you want to do, and don't stop other people from doing what they want to do. And don't feel that you have to do what they want to do, or vice versa. So that would be my advice. And on that note, I feel like if there's one thing I've learned from this talk, it has been that the three of us could easily go on for a 3-hour panel on this subject.
Yeah.
I have really appreciated being able to share this time with you, and I hope that our listeners, whoever's viewing this out there, all our DMs are open for questions and advice, not for inappropriate messages that we generally don't appreciate. But you know, if you want advice on anything or have other questions, I know I love getting messages from random people who want to know stuff. So with that being said, I guess New Haven Pride Center folks, you wanna hop on here? Howdy. Up, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. That's you think by now I would know to see if I'm on mute. But thank you, all of you, for being here with us, sharing everything that you shared, all your journey, your advice, and we are grateful and happy that you are all sharing your amazing art with all of you. I've seen all of you perform, and I'm a huge fan. To everyone out there, I'm going to flash everyone's social media real quick so you can follow Frankie, Giri, and Ray. Follow them on social media so you know where they're performing and you get to enjoy their shows. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you on our next panel. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. Thank